If I told you that it was raining outside my house right now, would you think I lived in a rainy climate? Well, if you did, you would be wrong. It turns out I live just outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, a city that is famous for its neon lights and has very hot, dry weather. The typical weather forecast for Las Vegas is sunshine, sunshine, and more sunshine. In fact, Las Vegas gets, on average, more than 310 sunny days each year. The weather is the conditions of the atmosphere around us at a given time, and it can change a lot. It could be hot or cold, sunny or warm, rainy or snowy. Climate is the average weather conditions over 30 years. This week in our science class, we are going to explore 4 of the different climate zones on our planet, starting with the warmest and wettest of them all, tropical rainforests. I'm Science Mom.
I'm Math Dad.
Today we're going to discover exactly what conditions you need to form a forest and which of these common foods come from trees. Hello and welcome. Today we are going to dive right in with a quick little food quiz for Math Dad. Are you ready for this?
I love food.
So I'm going to show you 8 different foods. They all come from a tropical climate. And you have to tell me which one does not come from a tree.
Oh, which one does not come from a tree? Okay.
So I'm just going to show them to you real fast, and then you gotta tell me. So a banana, chocolate, sugar.
I'm liking where this is going.
Coffee beans, cinnamon, pumpkin pie spice, and pepper. And you might have noticed those are 7. My 8th one is right here and kind of small. It's a cashew nut.
Ooh, delicious.
Which of these 8 things that I just showed you does not come from a tree? And you know what? The pumpkin pie spice actually spoiled. Let's just toss that one out because that one's a mixture of several things.
It has lots of things in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, boy, I have a theory. I think it's got to be the sugar. Sugar doesn't come from trees, right?
You are right. And shout out to Crystal and Connor and several others in the chat who put the same answer. Sugar does not come from a tree. In fact, sugar comes from a grass. It is a tall grass. If I show you a picture of the sugar, you might be surprised by just how big it is. Oh, nuts. My sugarcane picture did not make it in. It is a tall grass. If you were standing next to it, it would be even taller than you, but it is
so it's almost like bamboo, right?
Somewhat similar to bamboo. It does not have a trunk that grows out like a tree, but each of these other items does come from a tree. And tropical rainforests are full of trees, and they are the most diverse and most dense ecosystem on our planet. Of all of the plants and animals that live on Earth, it's estimated that almost 50% of them live in a tropical rainforest.
50%.
If you just look at the different types of species, 50% of our species are in a tropical rainforest.
Wow. So you in your intro, you said something really interesting that is new to me. You said that climate actually has a definition, that it's the average of the conditions over 30 years. So it's average weather across 30 years.
Average across 30 years. That is right. And we are going to explore the differences between a rainforest climate and a continental climate and talk a little bit about forests, because it turns out that for a forest to exist, there is one thing that you absolutely must have, and that is water. If you don't have enough water, instead of a forest, you will have a grassland.
I thought you were going to say you needed trees.
To get trees, you have to have water.
Oh, okay. So I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse. It's actually the water that's creating the forest. So it's the cause, and the trees are what's just coming because there's a lot of water.
If you have land and there is a lot of water that falls regularly, you will get forests growing because trees need a good amount of water and they have to have a consistent amount of water. Grasses, on the other hand, grasses can produce seeds, and then if there's a drought, the seeds can just lie dormant for a long time, and then they'll come back once the rain comes back.
So if you just looked at a place and saw what plants were growing there, could you predict what the climate is?
You can tell a lot about the climate by what plants are growing. You definitely can. Let's dive into the rainforest with a quick true story. Math Dad, I'm just going to warn you, this one might give you nightmares.
Uh-oh.
You ready?
Okay.
The first explorers who came to the tropical jungle from Europe, some of them were trying to build a canal across Panama. And when they got to this jungle that you're seeing right here, that was a picture from the Darien Gap in Panama. It's one of the densest tropical jungles in the world. They could not believe how difficult it was to try and explore this area. Their first night into the jungle, they tried to light a candle and they couldn't get a candle to light because there were so many mosquitoes. The mosquitoes would put the candle out.
Oh no.
So many of them would fly towards the light, it would just go out.
Okay, you did give me a new nightmare. Oh, can you imagine? Like, mosquitoes are awful, but that thick where you couldn't even light a candle.
Couldn't even light a candle. A jungle is so full of life that one of the first things that you need to get used to when you go there is that there are lots of bugs everywhere and they will bite you in the face.
Ouch.
But that diversity of life is really remarkable. And if you can get used to an occasional bug bite, with that little kind of joke aside, there is an incredible diversity of life in a rainforest.
That's fascinating to think about. And yeah, like trying to make the Panama Canal and the challenges that you'd be facing going through a forest like that. Wow.
Jungles are an incredible ecosystem. And I know that most of our students, special shout out to Hassan and Ira in Bermuda and Matthew and Christina in Gambia, West Africa. Most of the students, besides those people, most of them live in an environment that is not tropical. We live in a climate where it is cooler and drier. We live in a desert. And a lot of our students living in the US and Canada, they live in an area where they get 4 different seasons. And so we might be thinking, well, what do we care about rainforests? They're exotic and fun to visit. Let's take a look real quick at some of these foods that come from a rainforest, because it turns out that we get a lot of food and a lot of resources from a tropical rainforest.
All right.
So first, let's take a look at the cashew. So a cashew is a nut that I think is quite delicious, and you might be surprised to discover what type of tree it comes from, because it does not look like a regular nut.
But it does come from a tree, though.
It does. And this is what it looks like when you pick it.
How big is that?
This,
where was the cashew on?
The cashew is down at the bottom. So here's one that's more ripe. You can see that cashew apple. Up top is a pseudo fruit, and then underneath, inside that shell, is the cashew nut. So that little curved part is a little bit bigger than the cashew because you have to crack it open. And then on the inside will be the cashew. You
have to have that big thing just for one little cashew?
For one little cashew. So if you've ever wondered, why are cashews a bit more expensive than other nuts like peanuts? This is why.
They're going to be a lot harder.
Because you have to pick
harvest
them from a tree. You have to take the apple off. You have to crack open the shell and then get the nut out. That's a little more complicated than just opening up peanut shells.
Do peanuts grow on trees?
No, they actually grow underground.
Oh.
From a bush.
Okay. Mind blown.
Mind blown. Next, let's take a look at chocolate. So I have some chocolate chips here right in the speaker. This is a favorite food of a lot of people.
And they grow on chocolate chip trees.
They grow on cocoa trees.
They do?
They do. And here is what the tree looks like. You have a flower that comes out the side of the branch. It turns into a pod that is red. And then when it gets larger and riper, it turns yellow. And then when you cut it open, you have cocoa beans or pods or nibs. They have lots of different
I thought
names.
You said the chocolate chips grow on the trees.
No.
The cocoa pods. Okay.
Cocoa pods. And those beans in there, they are covered by a white slimy coating that is sweet and tastes a little bit like pineapple. And then the purple part on the inside, that is what gets processed and turned into chocolate. You ready for another one?
Yeah.
So next, let's take a look at cinnamon. If you ever get cinnamon sticks, you'll see that they have a really cool kind of circular shape.
Because the plants grow in stick shape.
Because it's bark from a tree. And when they peel it off the tree, that's what it looks like.
Wait, they can just peel off the tree bark and it doesn't kill the tree?
So they have to take off sections of it. The outer bark is not going to give you cinnamon. But if you take off the outer bark and then scrape off a little bit from the inner bark, that is a stick of cinnamon. And as long as you alternate chunks and leave some on the tree and then let it rest for a few years and then come back and do it again, you can harvest bark from the tree without hurting the tree. And that's where we get cinnamon from.
Oh, wow. Makes you wonder how they figured that out in the first place. See that tree over there? I'm just going to go eat a chunk.
It smells really good. If you brush up against a cinnamon tree and you scrape the bark, it smells like cinnamon. You can smell it.
Oh, really cool.
What do you think this one is, Math Dad?
Those look like peas, but I don't think peas grow on trees, so they must be grapes or olives.
Coffee. Those are coffee beans before they ripen. So they start out green, then they turn red, and then they get ripened and roasted and split in half, and you end up with the coffee.
So they're
not
huge. Yeah, I guess I thought
really
those were
huge.
bigger.
Nope, also comes from a tree. And then bananas are one of my favorites just because they look so unusual. That is a banana tree with a single banana flower. And you can see that one flower is going to produce a whole bunch of bananas.
That big thing was a flower.
That big thing was a flower, a banana flower. And then when they harvest the bananas, you don't just get, one little clump of bananas like what you see in the floor. You actually, those are
in the store.
In the store, you actually get a huge
Holy
group
cow.
of bananas. They're big and very heavy.
You're taking out a whole branch of the tree.
That was all from one flower. one banana flower will produce that many bananas.
Wow. That is very different from apples and the fruit that we can grow around here.
Very different. One more tropical plant that is very important to us is the coconut. So if you have ever drunk coconut milk or coconut water or gotten coconut oil, this all comes from a fruit that grows up on a large palm tree. That sign there says no sentarse abajo de las palmeras. That means don't sit under the coconut trees.
So I bet you can guess why you shouldn't sit under a coconut tree, because if a coconut fell, ouch, that would hurt so badly. It could probably kill you. Those are heavy.
You might have heard that coconuts are more dangerous than sharks, and this is actually true. More people die from coconuts falling on them than from shark attacks by swimming in the ocean with sharks. So a heavy, heavy fruit falling from a tree can be a dangerous thing, and you don't want to be taking a nap underneath a coconut palm.
And now you've given me more things to be afraid of.
But also things to be amazed about, because this tropical climate produces so many different types of plants, and some of the plants don't even need soil.
What?
They are called epiphytes. And when we visited Panama is a tropical enough location that if you leave a piece of wood outside, you will get bromeliads and orchids just growing on top of it.
Wait. Is there soil on top of the...
No, that was just a log, just a piece of wood, but it is so wet and there is so much water. The plants are actually able to get the nutrients they need through these specialized roots that are just on top of the tree, but don't go into the tree.
That is pretty cool.
They grow on the branches of trees, or if you happen to have a log next to your house, they'll grow just on the log.
So that's what makes orchids such weird plants, such special plants.
Orchids are amazing. And that is one of the special things about orchids. They come in so many different colors and varieties. Orchids are really a favorite flower of mine and of a lot of different people. But one of the special things about orchids is that they don't actually need soil. You can grow them just on top of some rocks or on top of some bark. And out in the tropical rainforest, they grow on other branches of trees. And we call plants that do that epiphytes.
Epiphytes. All right.
A plant that grows on top of another plant but is not a parasite. So it's not taking nutrients from the plant. It's just saying, this is a nice place to live. I'll live on top of you.
That seems really cool. I'm going to go colonize that tree over there.
Let me throw up a map real fast of the different climate systems in the world. You ready for this, Math Dad?
I'm ready, yeah.
Whoa! The dark blue that you see on this map, that is where tropical rainforests are. So tropical rainforests are located right around the equator, and there are a lot of different types of climate systems. If you are getting rain every single month and you're getting at least about 2 inches of rain or 60 millimeters of rain, then that's a tropical rainforest. But if you have a dry season where you don't get as much rain, then you might be a tropical monsoon or a tropical savanna. But our tropical climates produce an incredible amount of food, medicine, A lot of the medications that we use today, a lot of those were originally discovered from tropical rainforest. And they also have incredible resources in terms of lumber and forest and the oxygen that they produce. That's important too.
So it's sad. I mean, I've heard that rainforests are being destroyed, or we're losing rainforest every year. Is that true?
It is true that we are losing rainforest every year, and we want to do everything we can to stop that or try and slow it because they are such an important ecosystem. But for it to happen, for a rainforest to occur in the first place, it absolutely has to be warm and it has to be wet. Really, really wet. If you don't get at least 2 inches of rain every month of the year, then you're not a rainforest. You're going to be a savanna or a grassland or something else. For a rainforest to happen, you have to have that water.
Makes sense.
And then within that rainforest, you have the producers, the plants, and then you have the animals that eat the plants. Any guesses what we call those?
It's a consumer.
It is a consumer, a primary consumer, because it's eating the first thing that produce. It's eating the plants.
So plants produce, and then the animals consume. So animals are consumers, and plants are producers. Gotcha.
And then you can have secondary consumers as well, animals that eat other animals, predators.
Oh, so primary consumers eat the plants. The secondary consumers eat the eaters?
Eat the eaters, yes. The eaters of the eaters.
Ah. So but like predators and things. That makes sense. So examples would be like lions. Lions are secondary consumers.
Yes. Or in the tropical jungle, a jaguar would be a secondary consumer.
Okay.
And a snake would be a secondary consumer as well, because it's going to be eating other animals.
All right. What about, so birds?
It depends on the bird. Some birds are, like a hummingbird, only eats nectar from plants. It's going to be a primary consumer. But a bird like a hawk that eats other birds is going to be a secondary consumer.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, what about us?
Most humans are omnivores. They eat a variety of things, and something that's an omnivore is a secondary consumer.
Gotcha.
Now I have a question for you. We talked about tropical plants, but what about plants that are not tropical? Could you take a plant like a apple tree, and could you grow it in a tropical climate?
Ooh. Oh, okay.
So this banana tree, if I try and grow bananas in Michigan, I'm going to fail because they can't handle cold weather. But what about the reverse? If I take an apple tree from Michigan and then go and visit a tropical climate, could it grow?
Okay, so the reason that the banana doesn't work though is because it just can't handle the cold weather. It can handle warm weather. Apples can handle warm weather and cold weather. So if you move apples down to the rainforest, they're probably happy. Maybe they make these giant, huge apples. Maybe they would just, that would be cool.
Now, Math Dad, you should have listened to Finn and Kate and Tatiana and Corinne, because they all said nope, and they were right. The apple tree forms flowers in the spring and then makes apples that are ready to eat in the fall. And it only knows to make flowers because of the winter. So it actually has a clock counting down inside, and it needs to get a certain number of cold days before it will flower. If you take an apple tree to Hawaii and plant it, it will just be green all the time with leaves like it's in an eternal summer, and it will never flower and make fruit.
Oh, that's weird to think about. Can you trick it into flowering somehow?
Some people are working on ways to do that, and there are a couple varieties of peach where they've had success making them where they'll grow in a tropical climate. But it's a really tricky problem, because how does the tree know when to flower if there's no cold, when that's what it uses to know when to flower?
I'm just picturing people out there with ice cubes, rubbing them on the trees, trying to keep it cool. It's like, it's winter, you can flower now.
It would be a lot of work. Yeah, most plants that grow really well up north are not going to grow well in a tropical climate, including things like a potato. You might think that a potato would do just fine in the tropics, but if the soil is too hot, then the roots are not going to make this storage unit of the potato, and it also is too wet, and you get problems with it rotting and things like that.
Oh, yeah, interesting. So I imagine most plants are just growing where they would grow best for the most part already.
Plants and animals have really good adaptations to whatever climate is their home, and a lot of them cannot move from one climate to another. If you take a banana tree out of a tropical climate and put it in a different climate, it's going to die. And same thing for a lot of our other plants. They can't handle it if you change the climate too much. Let's go to page 32 of the notes real quick. And then we will take a look at a continental climate. So we looked at we talked about tropical climates. Let's go back to the other page real quick. A tropical rainforest climate. And Mastad, why don't you fill this in real quick
All right.
for us?
So rainforests are the world's blank ecosystems.
Wettest. They are by far the wettest ecosystems. They get more water than any other ecosystem in terms of rain. Some can get more than 100 inches of rain a year, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
These biomes have a high average temperature, nutrient-poor soil.
Soil.
This is a bit of a surprise. You might think that the soil in the rainforest, because there's so many plants, that it's really rich. It's not, because all of the water washes the nutrients out and away.
Oh.
And so most of the trees in a rainforest actually have really shallow roots, and they get their nutrients from the leaves that fall right at the top. But if you dig down a few inches and then scoop out some soil and try and plant crops in it, it's not going to be very good soil.
That is super surprising, because I would not have guessed that. All right. So they have very high annual rainfall and high levels of biodiversity.
Yes, they are the most diverse ecosystems in the world.
So when you say biodiversity, we're just talking life. Bio means life.
Yes.
So animals and plants.
Yeah. The joke that I told at the beginning, there are lots of bugs, they'll bite you in the face. That is true. And for human visitors, that might be a little bit annoying. But if you can get past a few bug bites, oh my goodness, the diversity of species in a rainforest is incredible. They contain up to about 50% of the world's plant and animal species, but they only cover 6% of the land area. So think of half of the species crowded into just 6% of the land area. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, when you showed us that map, it was, that dark blue, right?
Yeah,
That's what you're talking about?
The dark blue, the darkest blue you can see, that is tropical rainforest.
All right, and then tropical rainforests are near the equator.
And they're near the equator because that's where you have that intertropical convergence zone with all of that rain being produced, and they need a lot of rain.
Temperate rainforests occur near oceans and experience cooler temperatures for part of the year.
And this is a cool thing about rainforests. We usually think of tropical rainforests as being tropical, and that is one of the most important types of rainforests, but we also have rainforests up near in Washington and Canada along the coast, the west coast. And it's a temperate rainforest because it does get a lot cooler in the winter, but they get rain almost every month of the year as well.
So it really is the amount of rain that's making it a rainforest.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you look at a temperate rainforest, you're going to see the same thing where all of the branches of the trees have other plants living on them, but instead of orchids and bromeliads, it'll be mosses and ferns.
Gotcha. Okay, so real quick here, I'm seeing up top here, this looks like, I don't know what that is.
That is an orchid.
An orchid, okay.
It is the
an epiphyte, right?
Yes, an epiphyte. It is the national flower of Costa Rica, and it can grow on top of trees and get the water it needs from the air, which is pretty awesome. And then we have a green vine snake, which can catch hummingbirds for its prey.
Oh.
So it's a secondary
consumer. All right.
The giant blue morpho has iridescent scales. So that might have confused you. You might have thought scales for a snake. Snakes do have scales, but the butterfly does as well.
Those things are beautiful. The way
bright blue.
The light reflects off them.
And then the sloth is the one that has a whole community of animals living on it. Sloths are incredible animals.
Is that because it moves so slowly?
They do move slowly. In fact, it takes a sloth about a week for one leaf that it eats to pass through its digestive system.
Whew.
And they spend most of their time just hanging from trees, and they do look green because they have algae growing in their fur.
And then a white-nosed coati?
Coati.
Coati.
A coati is like a tropical raccoon. And it can walk down trees head first and has really flexible ankles and a really flexible snout.
Well, you can walk down face first.
Yes.
Okay, that's some talent there. I can barely climb down a tree without injuring myself.
Kind of remarkable. Let's go to the next page real quick and talk a little bit about continental climates, because this is a climate that a lot of our viewers are more familiar with.
Sorry. Okay, a continental climate has 4
seasons.
Okay.
4 seasons: spring, winter, summer, and fall. A lot of the northern United States, most of Canada, and most of Europe would fall into the continental climate. And if you're looking at the map on this page, you might notice that I kind of combined two of these when I drew my map. So when we were talking about climate classification, continental is kind of a broader category, and I combined a couple into this.
Gotcha.
It has a hot summer season, very cold winter, and they receive snow. If it doesn't snow, then it's not a continental climate.
Okay.
And this climate is not going to be found by the ocean. If you're in England, England has a maritime climate. It doesn't get much snow because all of that water around it really moderates the climate and the temperature and keeps it from having that big fluctuation. For a continental climate, you need to have a hot summer and then a winter that is way, way colder than the summer.
All right.
Famous cities that experience a continental climate include...
So we've got Moscow, Oslo, Mumbai, and Toronto. Those are the cities. And isn't Mumbai like India? Like,
yep, the city
really
of
hot.
The city of Mumbai does not have this climate. So that's our last one. And then Oslo, Moscow, and Norway all experience a continental climate.
Gotcha.
And great little comment from Savannah. The Philippines has 2 seasons. A lot of climates, once you're getting above and below the tropical rainforest, they do have 2 seasons because they're in a tropical monsoon or a tropical savanna climate. So they have a rainy season and a dry season.
Gotcha.
Let's look at a couple of these animals real quick before we have our Where in the World mystery.
So these are continental climate creatures?
And each of these animals live in a national park in Switzerland. So for our example for this little biome, I looked at the Swiss National Park in Switzerland, and the alpine marmot
is an herbivore that's an excellent climber?
It is not an herbivore that's an excellent climber.
It could be.
It mostly eats leaves and grass, but sometimes it will eat insects too, and it hibernates during the winter. So it's a secondary consumer. Even though it mostly eats plants, it will eat insects too. So it's a secondary consumer. And then our alpine ibex.
Oh, that's the climber.
That's the climber. The European larch is a fun tree because we usually think of trees as being either evergreen, they keep their leaves all year round and they're always green, or deciduous, they drop their leaves. But the larch is a conifer that drops its leaves. So it looks like a pine tree with green needles, but then in the fall, the needles turn yellow and they fall to the ground.
So that one, right?
Yep.
Like Corinne Bowser in the chat says, we always joke that Florida has 3 seasons: summer, snowbird, and hurricane.
Living in Nevada, I can relate to that, only without the hurricanes. The oak is just going to go straight across and match. It produces acorns. And then our predator in this group, or maybe I should say scavenger, the bearded vulture is an amazing bird. Most of its diet is bone. And these birds are pretty smart, and they actually use tools. They will take bones and fly up high, and then they will drop the bones on certain rocks to crack them open and break them into smaller pieces. So that's just a little snapshot of some animals that live in a tropical climate, some animals that live in a continental climate. And you can see that there are certain parallels. Both climates have trees, right? Both climates have plants that produced food and animals that eat those plants, and then animals that eat those animals.
So those were the producers, consumers, and primary consumers and secondary consumers.
Okay. Exactly. And now I think...
So I just want to talk some more about the continental climates. So the United States, is most of the United States a continental climate?
A lot of the United States is. So if you look at the north central US, all the way over to the East Coast, all of that's continental climate.
So pretty much everywhere that's getting snow.
Everywhere that gets snow is a continental climate, and everywhere that has a big temperature change between summer and winter, hot, dry summer, cold, snowy winter, that's a continental climate. And right by the coast, you're not going to have a continental climate because all of the water tends to change things a bit.
Okay, so it moderates the temperature.
It does. It moderates the temperature.
Gotcha. And what about Europe, Asia? Is that also continental climate? Is this the most common of the?
It's a very common climate, but if we look at our map here again, there are a lot of subvariations. So the light blue and sort of the turquoise-ish and the greenish, that you can kind of call all of that continental climate, and it does make up a pretty big sweep across our world map, but there are variations. Math Dad, I saved the hardest one for last with our Where in the World mysteries.
Okay, I'm ready.
You ready for this?
Yep. Bring it on.
This isolated island hosted a community of monks who fought off Viking raids from a twin pinnacled crag.
Okay. So where could this be? It's got to be Greenland, right? With Viking raids, but no, nobody was there to raid. Iceland. Nah.
So in location, you are close, but that's not the name of this place that we're looking for.
I haven't gotten any of the names right. Or no, I got Stonehenge right, I think. That was it. But it's not Stonehenge.
No, it's Skellig Michael.
Ireland.
Michelle, I'm probably not pronouncing that right. So this is an island off the coast of Ireland, and if I show you a picture of it, I think you might recognize it from a movie.
Is that like episode 7 and 8 of Star Wars?
Yes.
Where Luke was.
Yes, so that was used, that setting was used for the Star Wars movies, but they did not go out there and construct these buildings. These are actual ruins from a monastery that used to exist on top of these rocks.
Oh, no way. Yeah, so where Luke throws away the lightsaber and is training Rey, if you've seen that, that's in Ireland.
That is. And that island does not experience a tropical climate or a continental climate. This would be a different one entirely. And you can see there are not really any trees.
Nope.
Because of how small and isolated it is and how windy it is, you don't get trees on that island.
Skellig Michelle.
Skellig Michelle, Skellig Michael.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to say that, but okay, cool.
Are you ready now for poll questions?
I'm ready. I'm ready to stump some viewers here.
I don't think you're going to stump them. In fact, I'm going to go get Science Puppy for good luck.
Oh.
Go Team Science
They
Kids.
need all the luck they can get, Science Mom. All right. Moving over. So we want to go to itempool.com/sciencemom/live. And if we head there, you can participate in the polls. And if you're watching this later, just look down in the description for this video and you'll see a link to where you can actually try these polls as well while watching. All right. So our very first question, what is the name of a plant that grows on top of other plants? Is it an epiphyte, a parasite, an acolyte, or a satellite? Ooh. What do you think, Kaladin? Do you know the answer? Yeah, you'd grow on top of a plant, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Yeah.
He's like, no, I would eat the plant.
Yeah,
I
bark.
would chew it up.
One little bite at a time. Ooh, okay. So this is just a warm-up question. Most of them seem to be picking one choice here. It's probably the right choice.
So he was a little sleepy when I picked him up, and I think it's really cute. He just put his head right there like, I'll just block the light, go back to sleep.
All right, we're going to finish and reveal our answer. Epiphyte.
Epiphyte is the correct answer. That is the name for a plant that grows on top of other plants. And epiphytes are remarkable in that they can either pull water directly from the humidity in the air, or they can just absorb it from rain. A lot of them will have like a little kind of a cup-shaped leaves that can hold water inside them.
And I mentioned orchids because that's the one epiphyte I know, but there are others?
Bromeliads, yep. And
All right.
Certain types of moss and ferns. There are lots of different epiphytes.
Cool. All right, okay. Not bad that time, guys, but will you get this one? A hot, humid climate with no dry season and at least 60 millimeters, 2.5 inches of rain each month is called is it a continental climate, a temperate rainforest climate, tropical savanna climate, tropical rainforest, or a Mediterranean climate? Hot and humid with no dry season and at least 6 centimeters of rain.
60,
each month.
60 millimeters of rain.
Which is the same as 6 centimeters.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're right.
that's okay.
Math is your superpower.
It is indeed my superpower. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes all the time in even basic math. So
It's okay.
mistakes are okay. They definitely are. All right, so looks like the verdict is in. There seems to be one answer that got most of the votes. They called it a tropical rainforest.
And that is correct. And if it is a lot of rain and warm all the time but has a dry season, it'll either be tropical savanna or tropical monsoon.
Will you say that again?
If you have a dry season, it's
Oh.
tropical, but there's a dry season, then it's a tropical savanna.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, next one.
Question 3. A climate with hot summers and cold winters and 4 distinct seasons is typically called a continental climate, temperate rainforest, tropical savanna, tropical rainforest, or Mediterranean climate.
And I hope that for some of our students, I hope that seeing these names will prompt you to just do a little bit of study, because we don't have time in class to go through all of the different climates, but look up the climate classification for where you live and find out what it is and learn some things about it.
Because one could study for an entire semester just these different climates.
And the ecosystems that go along with them.
Yep.
All right. Oh, they've got this one in the bag, Math Dad. Look at that bar.
Yeah, I don't know. They got it. A continental climate, it is correct. And it just seems like that's the climate that I grew up in, that I know best. Continental climate. It just seems like, well, everywhere's got a continental climate, but
nope, we don't live in a continental climate now. We do not have winter with snow.
That's true. All right. Question number 4. So select all of the correct answers. Which of these animals are primary consumers? We've got,
And I know we went through these kind of quickly. We talked about these real fast in class today, so just take your best guess. White-nosed coati, three-toed sloth, alpine marmot, bearded vulture, green vine snake. Which of these are primary consumers?
Now I'm wondering if I know the answer.
You're wondering if you marked the right answer when you put them in? I write the questions and the Math Dad puts them into item pool.
Well, that's how it happened this time.
So that means that we can both blame the other person if there's a mistake.
That's right. Yeah. Pretend. Look what you did. All right. So lots of possible answers here. I'm confident on 2 non-answers, and I'm confident on 1 correct answer. But all right.
Let's go ahead and finish and reveal.
So I listed three-toed sloth, because I'm pretty
Correct.
confident that one's an herbivore.
Three-toed sloth is an herbivore.
And the alpine marmot.
Ooh, the alpine marmot will eat insects.
Oh.
And if it eats insects, then it's eating other animals, which means it is a secondary consumer.
Oh.
So the alpine marmot, because it's an omnivore, it eats grass and it eats insects. Okay. Then that would be a secondary consumer.
So like humans are secondary consumers because we also eat meat. Okay. I got you.
So we'll call that one a tie. 1 for the kids, 1 for Math Dad.
Well, either way, they got it right. So
oh, that's true.
So never mind. They still get all the points.
So that's like minus 2 for Math Dad. Is that what it is? You're extra behind.
We agreed on the answers. We're all happy. All right. Okay. Which of the following foods does not come from a tropical climate? So of all the foods listed there, select all of them that do not come from a tropical climate. So sugar, chocolate, coffee, banana, apples. Which do not come from a tropical climate?
What about this one, Math Dad?
That is a broccoli. See, she keeps me around for the hard questions, guys. Does it come from a tropical climate?
Yeah, and does it come from a tree? It looks kind of like a tree.
We all know broccoli comes from the broccoli plant.
It does, and it's not a tree. It's more like a bush. It's just grows right out of the ground in one season, and this is actually a flower bud. Lots and lots and lots of flower buds.
Wait, is that like? Is it a vegetable or a fruit, or is that different?
It's getting ready to flower. You're actually eating.
It's a flower.
A flower bud, and the stem. Isn't that kind of cool? So each of these tiny little green things on the broccoli plant, if you left it on the plant longer, they would open up into little yellow flowers.
Whoa.
Nutritious and delicious. One of the few flowers that we eat.
Okay, that is cool. All right, I'm seeing one thing that got lots of votes and one that got just some votes. So,
apple is the correct answer.
So the second most common answer here was sugar.
Sugar does come from a tropical climate, but it does not come from a tree. So sugar cane is a large grass, but it's absolutely a tropical grass. It can only grow in a tropical climate.
Okay, which is what the question was asking.
Yep.
All right, so they're doing pretty well today.
Last question here.
Ooh, which of the following foods can be grown in a climate that receives snow? Got cashews, cinnamon, potatoes, black pepper, peaches.
And if you live somewhere that gets snow, which of these could you grow in your yard? Because there's a couple that you could and several that you could not.
I don't know. Maybe none of them could. Yeah, no hints, Science Mom. Maybe snow kills all plants.
Science Puppy just curled up on my lap and he's asleep now.
I'm jealous. I want my nap too. Ooh, okay. So I'm seeing 2 categories get a little more votes. They're all getting some, though. So which foods can be grown in a climate that receives snow?
Let's go ahead and finish and reveal.
And the answer is potatoes and peaches. And they got it right. Oh, man. They had a perfect day, Science Mom.
Woohoo! Good job.
Nicely done, guys. Well played. And good job paying attention. So potatoes and peaches can handle the cold. It doesn't. Wait. So, are potatoes, do they have to be replanted each year?
Yeah, they do. So potatoes, they are a plant that grows in the ground, and then underneath the plant on the roots, you have the potatoes form, and they store energy or starch. And then in the next year, you can break open your potato and plant new ones. In fact, this one in our cupboard is starting to sprout because it's been in the cupboard for too long. It's like, I'm ready. Put me in the ground and I will grow into a plant.
Horns or antennae.
And
you said the peaches were needed the cold weather.
They have to have cold weather in order to flower. If they don't have a cold period, and in fact, there's a certain number of days that they need. And here, living in Las Vegas, certain fruit trees do better here than others because some of them need more cold days and some need fewer. And Denali and others are reminding us that we need a defeat dance.
Oh, do you want to? I think they'll forget.
Do you want to do it with Kaladin? Here we go.
Is Kaladin going to do it at the same time? All right, everybody watch Kaladin and not me. Here goes.
Bum ba dum bum bum. Woo! Dun 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 dun. Woo! Good job.
All right.
I'm going to answer a couple questions that came in really quick from our moderators. And Kara Rogers, Ailsa asked, can you eat those white coverings? Alyssa, sorry. Can you eat those white coverings on the cocoa beans? And you can. They're totally edible. They taste sort of sweet like pineapple. They taste a lot better than just the raw cocoa bean.
All right, what climate is Quebec?
Quebec, I believe, is a continental climate. Most of it. It depends on how close you are to the ocean. Because if you're close to the ocean, you may have a more maritime climate, a climate that is wetter and doesn't have as big a swing in temperature.
Ooh. Lisa wants to know how heavy are coconuts?
Coconuts are pretty heavy. I would have to look it up to be sure, but...
Like 10 pounds?
Yeah.
5 pounds? 10?
Between 5 and 15 pounds. They can be pretty heavy. Ailsa asks, are air plants epiphytes? Air plants are. If you've ever seen those little air plants like at Lowe's or Home Depot that look almost like a little fake plastic plant, and then they say you only need to spray it a couple times, those are actual epiphytes.
Does Antarctica have any plants?
No. Antarctica has just a couple species of algae that actually grow kind of in the in-between layer of rocks. The islands near Antarctica, some of those do have some grasses.
We're going to talk about that next time.
We will. Okay, and then last question Cynthia asked, is moss an epiphyte? It depends on the moss. There are some mosses that do function like epiphytes where they grow on top of other plants. And some mosses don't. All right, and then last but not least, we have a happy birthday to Finian, who has a birthday tomorrow. We hope you have a great birthday, Finian.
Happy birthday, Finian.
And we will see you guys on Wednesday with a lesson all about polar climates and deserts. We're going to go to the extremes on Wednesday. Work hard, grow smart. We'll see you soon.